Codex has a skill creator plugin. So I have it create skills for me as I feel, okay, you know what, I want a new skill. But I have no idea if Codex knows the right or best practice ways for even building a skill. Look at that.
Okay, so not bad actually, not bad at all. Hey there, Simon Maple here from Tessl, and here we are again at the Skills Clinic, and joining me is Nnenna from Qodo. Nnenna, welcome to the session.
Thank you for having me here.
And tell us a little bit about yourself. You're a developer advocate, right, at Qodo?
I lead developer relations at Qodo, and just always flying around the world, going to conferences, creating technical content for developers, and, you know, developer enablement.
Best country you've ever flown to?
Oh, that's a difficult one. You know, I've always enjoyed going to Paris, so I'll say France.
Nice. For the food?
No, the nightlife.
Oh, really? Nice. I like it.
No, for developers.
For developers. Oh, yes, sorry. Yes, that's right. No, we work for a living, don't we? I remember now. It's not just all fun and food.
Exactly.
It's developers. Yeah, that's it. Right. So, Nnenna, today we're going to do have some fun with skills. We're going to have a look at some Qodo skills, and we'll run some tests against them, see where they're good, see where we can improve, and we'll run some improvements and see if, of course, unless it's 100%, in which case we'll bask in the glory of your wonderful skills.
Yeah, we'll throw a party.
Exactly.
But in the case that it doesn't, I would love to see how this all works.
Amazing. So let's go to your skills. Your skills are on GitHub.
Yes.
So GitHub, and it's Qodo AI and Qodo skills. There we go.
Correct.
So if we come here, okay. So here we have in the skills directory, we have Qodo get rules and Qodo PR resolver. Which one? Let me fork this. Which one would you suggest we have a look at there?
I would say Qodo PR Resolver. It's used so widely.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about what PR Resolver is.
Yeah. So Qodo is an AI code review that automatically runs against pull requests.
Yep.
And then once all of those issues are presented in the UI, we really want developers to be able to fix their code automatically, to just move things forward. You run Qodo PR Resolver and point it to your PR, right directly in your coding agent. It's going to loop through and fix all of the issues Qodo pointed out, and then push that summary and the code changes back up to your PR.
Awesome. Okay, so we have cloned that repository. We have that there. Oh, look, it's Qodo skills and Qodo skills. Perfect. And we have our skills there. I'm going to run Tessl agent. And Tessl agent, let's make sure it can find everything. So we'll say, what skills do I have in this repo? I hate live coding because it just shows how poor I am at typing.
Do you use WhisperFlow or something typically?
I wish I should do more actually.
Yes.
Yeah. I'd love to use that as an excuse as to why my typing's so bad.
Exactly.
I will. Okay, so we have get rules and we have QR resolver, and as you say, fetches QR PRs and MRs, review issues, and helps resolve them. So we want to say let's run a Tessl review run on the PR resolver. Now, what this is going to do is essentially it's going to run as an agent, and it will run some tests to see if the Anthropic best practices are found in the skill, and where they are, you'll get the points for it. Where they're not, it will suggest ways of which it can better adhere. And of course, the Anthropic best practices there aren't always exactly what every organization wants. So just because sometimes a score drops a little bit doesn't actually mean it's wrong. It just means it's if you want to adhere to the best practices of Anthropic per se, then it skips a little bit.
This is a good way to kind of stabilize, I guess, the quality of skills over time if you're running Tessl against them.
Absolutely, and actually this is kind of like shows how well skills have been written, and the evals that we have, which are more scenario based, show the impacts that the actual skill will have in an agent. So we run tasks with and without the skill, and we see what scores and the criteria it hits or not.
I love that. I just had a talk yesterday about structured AI coding workflows, and people were asking me, skills can be brought into Qodo as context, but do you evaluate the quality of the skills? And I was like, no, but I know who does.
Oh, cool.
And I gave you guys a shout out.
Actually, Actually, we just spoke to someone who said they came here because of the workshop, and we were like, oh, our friends from Qodo have shared some folks. So
Power of DevRel.
Thank you for that. Absolutely, power of DevRel. So how do you use skills internally at Qodo?
Yeah, so we use Qodo PR Resolver when we use Qodo on our own code, right?
Nice
when we're shipping
yeah.
high quality code. So we use that. We use Qodo Get Rules, which is a great way for our coding agent to pull down any relevant coding rules or standards that we have. For example, every single Python method should have doc strings. That's just a basic rule that we want to have. That's a rule that we pull down if we're doing any Python code, and our coding agent has that context to do it right the first time. That is what we're trying to, we're trying to shift left with the code quality.
Okay, so right now we are running Tessl review run. So this kicks off the agentic process.
Yes.
We pass in the location of where your skill MD is, and we're running it in a workspace. So this is actually one of my friend's workspaces, but that's fine. And it will store the results in there, and then a label in which we can actually, we can do searches on and things afterwards. So that can take any number of minutes, but we'll see how long it goes for. I guess within Qodo, you're very AI native anyway.
Oh, absolutely.
How close to a software factory are you?
That is something I've been asking customers. No one's actually asked me that yet. I wouldn't say we're not there yet. That's what I can say.
Yep.
I do think it's going to become more important to be thinking toward that and actually implementing a strategy of adoption and enablement together as a company to get there.
Yeah.
Absolutely. What about you?
We're actually, so we use the Tessl agent to help us build a software factory.
Amazing.
And it's I think the thing which requires most adjustment is the individuals, the humans, in terms of trusting, following the new workflows, particularly people who have a greater number of years in the engineering discipline, because it's hard for them almost like to let go. So it's been a very interesting and sometimes challenging move across. But yeah,
this is a people thing. It's a people problem, people and process for sure, bigger than like the actual technology itself.
Absolutely. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about your workshops. You said you had a workship yesterday.
Yeah.
Tell us what was that was about.
It was all about quality. With everybody being worried about AI slop and like shipping really bad code into production, I just wanted to come in and kind of set the tone of like, we can be quality driven, and here is a workflow from planning to code generation all the way to code review and resolving those issues that will give you some confidence to feel like, okay, I have some guardrails around my agents. My agents have the context that they need to write code in the way that is good for me and my team and my engineering organization. And so I walked through that step by step with an example of a code change process in a repo that I made everybody fork. So they've all got access to it, and anybody can access it on GitHub.
Awesome. Well, the review's done. Should we have a look at the score?
Look at that.
Okay, so not bad actually, not bad at all. So the review score is 78%.
Okay.
There are a couple of, there's a validation warning. So there's 20 missing relative links. Now, this is an interesting one because very often the relative links, it could actually just be a slight a difference from the best practice of how those relative links are written. Very often, however, the agent will recognize from a relative link where that file is and determine it, but sometimes it doesn't. Strong actionability needs less repetition. Actually, this is a really interesting one because a lot of the time we as humans, we very often repeat the same thing multiple times, thinking an agent needs to hear it multiple times, but actually these days a lot of the time they don't. The description score is very strong, specific, could include more natural trigger phrases. This is super important because the description, of course, on a skill is one of the 2 bits of metadata that helps an agent to trigger the actual skill. So if the description is good, the agent will be more likely to trigger it because it knows, I need to use this when blah happens. So
we could use a bit more,
maybe just adding in
words.
Qodo issues or Qodo review or Qodo
my coding
suggestions.
agent or whatnot would know, okay,
so that when you say Qodo issues or something like that, it knows to trigger your agent. So why don't we go ahead? Let's run. Okay, so let's say great. let's run Tessl. Let's run Tessl review fix. And what that's going to do is essentially runs it again, but it's going to apply the fixes and then rerun the agent to identify, rerun the review to see how far with those fixes we can get that score up. So it runs it again agentically, and hopefully we'll be able to jump that score, and I'll fire over a pull request as well to see if you guys would be interested in using it.
I noticed it also recommended you should run verification process after you've fixed all your code. And that was actually what someone brought up in my workshop right here.
Oh, cool. Oh, here, yeah.
That we should make sure that the agent should run all of your linters and the static analysis after it's already made changes to your code and fixed it. Yes. I think that's a really good practice. So nice. I'm interested in seeing what these results will be like.
Cool. So yeah, this run we should be able to see the fixes straight after. Why don't we jump across, and what we'll do is we'll open that folder. So let's see, where are we? Let's go into Tessl, and I think I created a Qodo skills. And in here, we have your skill and we have the PR resolver. So walk us through this then. So we have the skill MD obviously, and only a couple of resources. So the skill MD, interesting, so in the description, this is essentially where most of the triggers happen, but you also have triggers, which can be used as well in terms of giving the agent that knowledge of saying when certain things happen, use this skill. So then you talk about the resolver, you have a bunch of tools, and okay, interesting. This does look okay to me in terms of, we'll see what the change looks like. But that does look okay. Very often links should be as markdown links, so that looks pretty reasonable to me.
I'd be curious to know if our results, the scores, what are some common scores that you've seen? Is that on the better end, or is that average?
That's actually pretty much I'd say that's on the better end. I mean, typically review scores, very often you would use something like this Tessl review in a PR as like a GitHub action or something like that. So that when PRs are pushed, and it's against a skill, you'd want to say, okay, let me review to make sure we haven't regressed and things like that. And typically the threshold is we don't want anything below 80. So the fact that you're virtually at 80 now, and a little bit of noise, because this is LLM as a judge as well. Yes. So a little bit of noise, and you'll find yourself maybe run it a few more times, and you'll be at 80 with the same skill without untouched. So it's actually a pretty good skill already. This is what we're looking at here is tuning versus any major changes, I would say.
That's awesome.
A lot of people, they get their skills and they're like at 20, 30%. And the biggest trick is people will, and I'm at fault for this as much as the next person, when you start adding your metadata, you add a name and description, you just say something really quick. And it's like a couple of words, or this does this. And people forget, or people don't know, that description is what the agent needs in order to trigger the skill. And if that description's bad, it will never trigger your skill. And it's such a key piece that people miss.
Do you coding, I have Codex create, it has a skill creator plugin. So I have it create skills for me as I feel, okay, I want a new skill.
Yeah.
But I have no idea if Codex knows the right or best practice ways for even building a skill.
Yeah.
Now that I'm thinking about it.
This is such an important piece. There was a paper written, a research paper that talks about how good skills are that are AI generated. And I think that, and very often it was found that when it's context that is created in an agentic fashion, it doesn't actually provide that uplift that people are after. But validated, verified skills where humans go in, look at it, make changes and things like that, all of a sudden that really jumps the value. So I think on average, the jump goes up to I think it averages around 14%, I think the paper said, for human written skills. But for non-human written skills, for agentic skills, I think the average was slightly lower. It actually sometimes regressed your environment. So it's very interesting to kind of see that.
Very fascinating.
Okay, so it's done.
Wow, I see I see things going up.
It's an 11% increase up to 89%.
Amazing.
Let's do a. We don't need to rerun the review because that's actually already done as part of the fix. Let's do a git diff of the changes. And yeah, I mean, that's actually pretty good. So here we go. Here's the diff summary. So added a shared section applying each fix. Execute the Qodo agent prompt directly instruction.
So kind of condensed or reorganized some of those sections, maybe?
Yeah, it also condensed this piece, so it replaces duplicated fix. And actually, sometimes when you reduce a skill in terms of just the sheer number of lines, it actually by reducing the context that you give, you can actually make it easier for the agent to follow. I think your skill is actually small enough that it wouldn't matter too much, because typically Anthropic say no bigger than 500 lines, which I think your skill is well under.
Makes sense.
But yeah, a couple of duplicated areas. Auto fix, another duplication there.
Yeah.
What would be super interesting after this, we can do it offline, but to run the evals before and after the change to see if it's actually having an improvement on the results of various tasks with the old skill or with the new skill. So that,
I'd love to see that.
That would be super cool.
Yeah. And it did add the validate after applied check, which is
add the validate,
really
yeah.
awesome.
So reopen editor file, run the lint and the type check test if available. Super cool. Super cool. I'll tell you what I'll do. What I'll do is I'll push this change and raise a PR back to the Qodo repo, and you can take a look at that. And if there's anything there that you wanted to grab, that's all yours to have a play. Awesome. Nnenna, it's been absolutely wonderful having a chat, and great to play with the skill. Looks great, and hopefully some of those changes you'll find useful.
Thank you so much, and I learned a lot from you too.
Oh, likewise.
And I definitely need to start using Tessl more with all of the skills I'm building and need to manage.
That's great to hear. And of course, we love Qodo. We're good friends, so we'll absolutely do that. Amazing. Thanks, Nnenna.
This was fun.